Oh, hi, friends. This is Dan Granger. I'm the CEO of Oxford Road, and you have found yourself at the center of the Media Roundtable, and it is a very special edition because we do a very private event once a year called the Chief Audio Officer Summit. Some call it the Davos of podcasting. It's a room full of marketers. And we always make this show for marketers because we're talking about the business of podcasting. But these are people that are typically lower funnel advertisers that invest in a lot of different types of audio. About half of them do radio. But pretty much everyone in the room is really invested financially, emotionally, spiritually, every way that you can invest in this channel. They care, and their businesses depend on this channel. So we had about 75 of them, literally, some of the top brands holding up the industry, all assembled in one room. And it was over a 2.5-day event at beautiful Terranea Resort in sunny Southern California, where the weather was perfect. We were right by the ocean. And honestly, it was a magical event. Third time doing this, and hands down the best one. But within that event, we do a little bit of a conference, okay? It's not all conferencing, and it's not like any other conference that you've been to, but we do have some panels where brands can learn from each other. And to kick all that off, I have the good fortune, by the way, this is our third time doing this presentation. I do a keynote that is called The State of Audio Advertising. And we look back at the last 12 months and say, like, okay, what has changed? What are not just the trends, but like, where's this whole thing going, and how do you adapt to that in your business? And so I'm going to let you listen in on that presentation. It is the probably signature address that I do in the 12-month cycle. And we go through some really interesting information that I think will have a lot of practical application for what you do if you work in this business as well. We talk about things like the podcast election, the changes in the brand safety space a little bit. We go through a lot of the numbers about changing listener dynamics and engagement. But at the end of the day, a lot of it's about money. And with the invasion of video, it's turned so much of the industry on its head that we wanted to lean into that as a primary focus. So the theme of the talk is called Finding Our Frequency. And we're going to just let you listen in and see what you think. Enjoy. The year is 1912. The radio spectrum is a chaotic free-for-all. On the open seas, amateur operators jam vital ship frequencies, clashing with emergency channels. On April 15th, the Titanic's final CQD distress call battles through a barrage of interference from nearby ships and unregulated signals. Rescue efforts are sabotaged. Lives are lost. The solution was not better equipment, it was agreement. The Radio Act of 1912 gave operators specific frequencies and call signs, what we know as radio stations today. Seemingly overnight, chaos became commerce. Clear signals begat larger audiences. Larger audiences begat real dollars. Radio's golden age began not with innovation, but with standardization. Today, podcast advertising lives in the same chaos that nearly ruined radio a century ago. Question for you. What is a podcast? Seriously, I'm still trying to figure it out. What is a podcast? Is it audio on RSS? Is it a video on YouTube? Are all shows podcasts? Why limit it with a definition? What team or specialist owns it in your marketing organization? Is it your digital group? Is it your audio team, your video team, your influencer team? Lots of teams. How do we measure an audience? Is it views? Is it downloads? Is it starts? Is it completions? As a marketer, do we really care about anything other than how many impressions our ads receive? Oh wait, we don't measure impressions. We have attribution pixels and vanity URLs that disagree with each other. We have ROI calculations built on incompatible data. Last click, first click, red click, blue click. We have created our own interference pattern. Media planners waste time reconciling reports that should align but don't. Brands struggle to benchmark performance. The result? Inflated acquisition costs and partial signals. Frustrated executives who question whether this channel actually deserves serious investment. Bottlenecked spend and fewer customers. Is this channel, whatever you want to call it, really ready for prime time? Unlike in 1912, we don't need regulators to save us. The power is actually sitting in this room. We have 6 of the top 10 advertisers in podcast right here today. Over $500 million by our calculations in annual spend in this channel. That's a lot of buying power. Yeah, give it up for your media spend. But we can do something with that. It matters that we're all assembled here. You control the spend that platforms, publishers, and agencies like us depend on. You should set the standards that agencies follow. You should choose the metrics that matter and which dashboards actually deserve our attention. By speaking with one voice, by demanding the same definitions, measurements, the same transparency, we can turn today's confusion into tomorrow's growth. Let's rewind for a second for the newcomers and the rest of us who forgot what we talked about. We did one of these a year ago. Just a couple of highlights. These were the key themes that we were talking about 12 months ago. We were dealing with increasing ad loads. That came up a lot last night. We launched something we called the Oxford Clock, actually, and you can download this white paper. We wanted to show marketers, but honestly, it's a resource for publishers to think about how many ad minutes per hour can they run until the advertising starts losing effectiveness. We showed the correlation and where the breaks are. What we ended up concluding was the best thing that we can do is have about max 8 minutes of ad time per hour. We recommended that every ad break be no longer than 2 minutes, and hopefully at least half of that is voiced by the host. But in that situation, either way, no listener is ever more than 60 seconds away from the voice of the host. So that was something that we released last year. You can download the report if you're interested. We said brand safety was going to get politicized, was getting politicized. It was becoming like the concept of brand safety and suitability that a lot of us rely on to make decisions, or to at least help inform our decisions. Like the tools and the mechanisms were coming under attack. And then if you're familiar with GARM, that collapsed shortly thereafter. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. We mentioned the rise of video as the elephant in the room. You may have heard of a company called YouTube that now owns 25% of U.S. podcast consumption, according to Edison's recent share of ear study. Every pressure that we forecasted a year ago is still here. It's just actually very much amplified. Things are increasing, so buckle up. The state of audio in 2025 is that we are finding our frequency, and it's kind of hard to find. This morning, what I'm going to walk you through is where we stand and where we need to go from here. And so let's go into some numbers. Let's start with your, well, not numbers. We're going to start with some quotes, but these are your quotes. This is data that you gave us in the survey that you filled out before you came here. So I might have alluded to this last night. What we do with this is we package it up into something that we started doing last year called our What Brands Want report. And we aggregate your views. When I talk about mobilizing with one voice, we take this, we aggregate it, and we use it to share with the industry, the people that are making decisions about the products that you're buying. We want them to hear your perspective because fundamentally you should be determining what is needed for the marketplace to thrive. And we use that to inform a lot of our programming decisions. So I could have gone into a lot of, whether or not we should still even be using the word audio, I'm not sure. We could have gone in a lot of directions. We tried to use this feedback to narrowly focus on what was going to be most important to the people in this room. So let me just share a few excerpts of what you guys said. We asked you, what's one thing that you wish the podcast / audio, we have to disclaim it now, should they do to increase its attractiveness to you as an advertiser? So just to call a few out, better ad load and ad serving standards, more audience information, cleaner reporting, and YouTube pixel capabilities. Don't know if that's going to happen, but it is going to be a topic today. Better performance measurements. Pixels on YouTube. I'm seeing a pattern. It's very important that hosts deliver personal, authentic reads. That still matters, and I really like hearing that because, listen, we all have to keep up with where impression-based buying is going, programmatic. Like, we're not trying to fight that by any means, but we have to keep our eye on this. This has to stay the Alamo for this industry. Whatever you call it, whatever lane lines you put around it, that's the heart and soul. And you, the advertiser, particularly if you're a performance advertiser, you know that that's critical for us. So I'm glad that came up. Okay, now we'll get to numbers. Just so you know who's in the room, we asked you which audio channels are currently part of your mix. So over 80% of you said audio and video simulcasted podcasts. So this is a very podcast-heavy room, and so we're going to spend a lot of our time talking about that channel. And honestly, I think it needs the most conversation. It's interesting to note, we had over 70% saying audio-only podcasts. Terrestrial radio had a respectable 50%, so about half of you are using that channel. A little bit less than that is streaming audio, which was kind of surprising to me that it's kind of low. We have video-only podcasts, and we had Sirius XM, okay? Let me get out of the way here. The other one is which stages of the funnel are you measuring for audio performance? So what's interesting is upper funnel was like less than 20%. And that looks like it's between 10 and 15%. So lower funnel is the room right now. More than 60% of you are primarily focused on that. So what we're really talking about today is we're talking about a lot of performance marketing with podcasting being a focus. And the major through line of your pain points was certainly measurement. Okay, let's go to the next piece. We're going to start looking outside of this room now and talking about the numbers. So, and this is going to get a little detailed, but I think it's interesting. To orient you, what we decided to do was give you a picture, and I'm going to stand back so you can see some of it. We wanted to start by zooming out and looking at what's happened over the last 10 years. So Edison's Share of Ear report is like the flagship report on consumption in our industry, and it turned 10 years old this year, so it's a really interesting view. First thing to notice is radio, which nobody listens to anymore, except 60% of Americans 13 plus listen to radio every single day. It is dwindling. Daily reach declines about 1% per year, and that's been happening over the last decade. Radio scale still comfortably exceeds every other audio channel, but it's a buyer's market. So word to the wise, don't be too cool for terrestrial radio. It offers reach and efficiency, and it is very much a buyer's market. You're going to hear a panel talking about how to leverage that later on today or this morning. The growth channels, no shock here, are streaming and podcast. Streaming specifically, pretty big gains, about 15% in absolute terms. About 40 million more people are listening to audio on streaming today than they were a decade ago. The real story here is this guy, podcasts, you can see tripled. Okay, really, really massive changes, more so than anything else. I would call out audiobooks, second from the right. Audiobooks is kind of a new idea as an ad format or a platform that allows ads. The ads that are available there at all today are programmatic. Sometimes they're targeted based on listener data, which can make it kind of attractive for future targeting opportunities. So it's something to have on your radar. Platforms are keeping ad inventory really low right now, probably to avoid disruption of the experience. But there's testing ongoing here, and I think it's a space to watch. You can see the gains as a lot of the channels are losing share. Okay, let's follow the money for a little bit. Ahead we go. Okay, this is a cool one. So this shows you spend by channel. All right, so let me call out a few things. What we're trying to demonstrate here is how well investment is reflecting consumption. So if you zoom in on the last few years, we didn't, this is not a decade-long comparison. We went 2022 and we project out to 2026. Radio still commands the majority of spend at $10.3 billion, which makes sense, which gives you a lot of reach, of course. Okay, and so here's the point I want to make here. It's actually pretty well balanced in how the money proportionately splits out with consumption within the audio sphere relative to media spend. So we talked about radio is losing 1% a year in listenership, but it's actually losing 2% a year in ad spend, which is about $700 million annually since 2022. Whereas streaming is increasing about 3% a year. Podcasting, unsurprising, is growing about 14% year over year for the past few years. And look, these are very reflective of something that I think is what you guys told us. Podcasting is very interesting to advertisers. It's a very unique format. And I think many brands have been built already, and people have had great exits just on the back of podcasting. So it explains why there's so much enthusiasm with marketing. eMarketer says there's about $2.5 billion of revenue coming into podcasting, but there's some discrepancies in the estimates that I want to highlight on the next slide. So here we go. Where's Hernan? There he is. Okay, thank you, Hernan. Hernan's the founder of Wondery, runs a firm called Owl & Co. right now, and he put out a fascinating report. I don't know if this hit your radar. He projected that podcasting today, and this is a U.S. number, it's almost double if you look internationally. So it's 4.3 billion relative to the 2.4, because it was interesting during COVID. Every time we talk about this stuff, it's like, podcast keeps going up. It's going to be another billion next year and 2 billion the year after that. And it's just going to keep going up and to the right. And then all of a sudden, like year and a half, 2 years ago, they're like, well, actually, we're going to be between 2 and 3 billion for the next 5 years. And it seemed like it was kind of stalling out, which I didn't think made sense. But what was happening is it was getting harder to measure. So I really appreciate that Hernan took it on to do a really robust investigation into this. What they figured out is that a lot of the revenue that's not being accounted for is coming from YouTube's partner program. Now, there are other contributing factors as well, but that's probably the biggest slice of the pie. There's no question to me that this number's been underreported, and I imagine this one's a lot closer to the whole. So thanks to Hernan for highlighting the gap. And what's interesting, we talk about what's a podcast. Well, how does an industry measure its growth if it can't define what it actually is? That's one of the implications of not having a definition. That may not seem like it has direct implications on some of the folks here today from an industry standpoint. I think it impacts how much investment goes in. When investors see that a market's starting to flatten out, you're not going to invest in the long-form shows that, like, I think Wondery did a great job giving a blueprint for these like deep, heavy investment narratives that can go into a topic that are really expensive to produce. So when we don't have the right numbers, it does affect programming. Programming affects what it is that you have to buy. We'll talk more about it. Okay, share of ear versus opportunity. Staying in the nitty-gritty here. On the left, you have time spent, and we're zooming out again. Now we're not spending a lot of time outside of audio and podcasts today, but for our purposes here, we're looking at time spent with channels. Okay, time spent we think is an important metric. So on the left, you see daily time spent, and TV and social have a commanding lead. But what's pretty impressive is like audio's showing up. Like, audio's not that far behind social media. The average American is spending 1.5 hours a day with terrestrial radio, about an hour plus a day with streaming audio, and podcasts are getting roughly 30 minutes. So that's from eMarketer. They tend to be on the more conservative side of these estimates. Nielsen says that in Q1, they publish it. They think there's about 4 hours daily that a consumer spends with audio channels. So on the right, ad dollars spent per user hour on the channel. Okay, so this affects pricing, and it's a good barometer for clutter, how much ad concentration we have. It also might, as we know, clutter can reduce ad effectiveness, and I think that's what's relevant for us here. There's high demand that's likely to increase CPMs, putting pressure on performance. So TV does a little bit better than social, actually far better, 15 to 20 cents per hour spent, depending on the format. So from this perspective, the wider media mix, podcasts, and probably you could argue all of audio remain uncluttered and are cost-effective relative to other channels. It's a good buy. A lot of brands are actually starting to come into podcasting, and I think sometimes performance marketers might complain about that. I think it has pros and cons. There's a lot of pros. It's expanding the market, right? 78% of brands are actually saying that they advertise on podcasts. What's a podcast? How would they know? And the pressure of increasing ad load, I think, is a thing, but despite that, it's still in a pretty healthy state, and it's as attractive as it's been. We haven't seen a real degradation there. All right, let's talk about some of the movement. There was so much going on during COVID with, there's a new billion-dollar deal for a podcast host jump into this or that. Caller Daddy switched this year, jumped over to SiriusXM. Trevor Noah jumped over to SiriusXM. Congratulations to our friends at Sirius. Wondery picked up the new heights. And if you were with us last night, you learned Diary of a CEO got a $100 million offer and turned it down. So what does that mean? I think if you're going to draw anything from this, I would say that exclusivity is pretty short-lived. Creator contracts are a little bit more transient. It's a syndication era. For most of the marquee shows, they're not sticking around if they don't like what's happening. But not everybody wants to play that game, and so you still see some real powerful independence. Let's talk about M&A briefly. Also, not as much movement. Fox bought Red Seat Ventures, the conservative podcast network. Triton bought Sounder, which is a brand safety tool. Acast picked up Wonder Media. And if there's a pattern here, I don't know if you can call it small sample size. I don't know if you call that a pattern. But if there is one, I think it's that infrastructure is swallowing tooling and large channels are swallowing next gen of their format. But this is nothing like the frenzy that we saw during the pandemic period. Things are pretty chill right now. Okay, this one, I don't want to belabor this. It really is only important for our purposes here in terms of the, what it means to the market. Typically what would happen with a company like this, it was probably one of the larger deals in the industry this year. And, usually groups like us, we would go to a generalist holding company and we'd become features so that they could say they have a podcast capability or something like that. We jumped in with both feet and said, how do we leverage this to actually make a bigger impact and actually move the market in a direction that's going to be helpful to expand it. Like, we think that with a concentration of force, we can actually start to make things a little bit easier, to pave the roads a little bit more and make it a more hospitable place for everybody to do business in. And so we have a lot of initiatives that you see coming out of us, whether it's like things like our Podload report, where we're trying to make recommendations to the market on better ways to have a more sustainable ecosystem. Chief Audio Officer is an example of that. And so our hope is that the whole industry, like wherever you're at in the ecosystem, that everybody benefits from this transaction. I hope today proves that out a little bit. Who are these guys? Okay, so quick history break. In 1960, Richard Nixon looked great on the radio. And if you were listening, you would have said that he beat Kennedy, his senator peer, in the debates. But you can see him profusely sweating, and he's mopping that off of his face. And people didn't understand the TV medium. They didn't know the power of it. So this was like the first televised debate, right? And so what happened is, he mopped his face, and Kennedy mopped the floor with him in the debate, and it really moved the needle when what was a very close election changed the outcome of history. in a single moment, and showed, I think, for the first time how new media could be disruptive in changing the course of an election. So underestimate new media at your own peril. We saw this with Obama in social media. So it happened again. You might have seen some of the new smoke-filled room where the decision makers decide which king they're going to crown, as they did this year. You had a Nixon-Kennedy moment in podcasting where a niche medium that, for a long time it had been the little engine that could, were still very nascent in so many different ways, but it showed that it could unleash market powers that would change the course of history. And, Trump took the time to pay attention to podcasting, found large and influential shows with switchable voters, with people that he could get to move, and he leaned into it. We're not getting political on this. I think the point is that the new power brokers in the modern age have shifted, and what the press called the podcast election, I think, had major implications that we're all dealing with. Okay, you may not like how the election turned out, but that's nothing to do with this. The mic drop moment happened, and long-form, host-read, trust-based media influenced a race. So that proved it, and everybody saw it. Everybody watched it happen. And I think one of the things as a consequence of that is like the word podcasting kind of got cemented even further in culture. It was already, pretty well entrenched. And so whether or not we want to move it on from this term and a definition, this had a major impact on that. And you started to see the world pay attention. So here we are. Platform power shift kind of correlates with the video invasion. There was a YouTube's earning call that confirmed 1 billion monthly podcast users on the platform. Netflix is getting in on the action. Spotify, meanwhile, jumped into video with both feet. And for advertisers, my view is it's equal gift and hazard. Video has a ton of benefit for us, right? I don't think audio in podcasting specifically really ever got good at sharing and promotion and distribution. But with video, now you can really scale something and you can expand the reach and the influence. That's a good thing. The challenge is there's a cost to all that, right? So then we get into what we're referring to as metric mayhem. Brings us to attribution, all right? You have to find agreement between promo code redemptions, vanity URL conversions, brand lift studies, media mix models, pixel data, clean room data, whatever you can get your hands on, right? I don't need to tell you, you already told us. And all this confusion is costing the industry a fortune. I think it costs our sponsors here, our publisher partners, platforms. I think it costs everybody in the room money. All of the confusion, and it creates a lot of brain damage, friction. The user interface is not as good as it should be. We'd like to have a better product for you. And so it causes people to probably hold back spend. If you're not willing or able to do the work, you're not going to get to as many properties as you could if it just wasn't so hard to do business with. And it chokes out large swaths of an otherwise lucrative acquisition channel. So we asked you, what would most improve your confidence in audio attribution? You guys gave us some interesting data. 74% of you said you would increase your audio investment if YouTube podcasts offered measurement on par with embedded pixel attribution. Interesting. 94% of you didn't blame the tools not shooting the messenger. You said current tools help the plan measure, optimize audio campaigns somewhat well or very well. So not a tooling problem. Just to compound, this is fun, is the brand safety collapse that I was alluding to earlier. So GARM, for the unacquainted, is Global Advertisers for Responsible Media, part of the World Federation of Advertisers. I can go long on this, but I'm going to try to keep it tight for you. It was the leading framework across all advertising channels that was supposed to help brands make decisions about what type of content was safe and what was suitable. Okay? They started having legal challenges around the time we were talking about it last year. They got sued by Elon Musk and almost immediately shut their doors. So GARM dissolves and marketers are back in the Stone Age. And today, many are in fear of actual political persecution for trying to measure the suitability of your content. All right, what are your primary brand safety concerns while we're on the topic? Check this out. This is kind of interesting. Political extremism, political bias and lean, misinformation. By the way, nobody's ever going to get anywhere with that because people can't agree on what information is. You'll have an easier time defining a podcast. But this stuff is primarily political. That is what brand safety is usually about. Now, violence is a close second. That is still very much a concern for people. Adult content, still a concern. Profanity, nobody seems to give a hoot. So, for those that do, keep it clean. All right. What's your biggest barrier to increasing your audio podcast spend? Okay, well, let's go with the ones that we can't really unpack very well, which is like budget constraints, 34%, second biggest slice of the pie, insufficient audience data, 3%, so it's maybe not a targeting issue. Limited overall marketing budget, can't do much about that here. That's at 11%. And we go over here, limited performance data, 49%. That is the bottleneck, right? That's the thing that the industry could control if so inclined. That's why we're always talking about attribution. I've never talked to anybody about any subject more than attribution. Have you guys? Are your families tired of hearing you talk about attribution? Like, when do we get to stop this? There's other things to discuss. Okay, so we have a measurement problem, don't we? And we started leaning into this a year ago. I'll talk a little bit about it, but we asked you a few things. We said, what is your definition of a podcast? So there's really one. 88.5% of you said audio or video show available across platforms, e.g. YouTube. So there's pretty broad agreement in this room about what a podcast actually is. So marketers, at least those that participate, are all on the same page. How important is it to have a consistent podcast definition for your business? So 15% said unimportant. 29% are like, I don't care. It's neither. 51% said it is important. And so do definitions matter? It's a bit of a split decision, and like we spend an inordinate amount of time talking about it. I do. And I think that sometimes I get pushback because it's like, well, we don't really care. Call it whatever you want, define it however you want. But like, it does impact your marketing decisions, particularly if you have a larger marketing team and you're trying to figure out who's responsible for what, right? You guys are feeling this. So we've talked a lot about problems. Now we want to talk a little bit about solutions. Earlier this year, we took this head on. This was a major project for us that was very industry facing first. And we have a podcast called the Media Roundtable. And I'll use that, and our team uses that as a way to really truly have like kind of this type of conversation, but with the industry. And we'll bring stakeholders in to talk about what's going on and what does that matter to the market. So we interviewed about 30 industry leaders, some of the people that built the place, to ask them like, why'd you get into this? And what do you think a podcast is? And like, does it matter? And so our goal was to try to come up with like a common definition so we could have some clarity on that. So I'm going to show you the trailer.
I still want to kill the word podcast.
That's not just a hot take. It's a symptom of an identity crisis.
Big company run media, and people are trusting it less and less. That it's really important that we're independent.
There's a handful of companies that control the vast majority of podcast inventory that have the vast majority of the gigantic shows.
We left radio behind for a reason. We wanted to get away from all the gatekeepers.
I don't know that you could do this as effectively in video.
Podcasting is at a crossroads. I've watched the industry swing from hype to consolidation to reinvention. But this time it's different. From the producers of the documentary Age of Audio, Oxford Road presents the Media Roundtable special series. What's a podcast? The Revolution Redefined.
All of us who work in the media, like, yeah, we got to run a business and like, we got to make a living and we got to sell our ads and we got to do all that. But we all got into it because like, I think most of us, like, it just gave us a feeling.
A 3-part series where you'll hear the leading industry voices give their takes on what podcasting has become and where it's headed next. What's a Podcast is available now. Find it wherever you get your podcasts.
We partnered with Edison Research, and we surveyed over 4,000 Americans 12 and up to find out, what do you think it is? Because like that's important. We know what marketers think. We know what experts think and industry insiders, but what do consumers believe? Our white paper is called What is a Podcast? And basically, the majority of like the highest definition was really the same as yours, which is recordings of people discussing any topic on YouTube that are also available as audio only, right? And so what we did was, like, I didn't want to make assumptions and try to push like what I thought it should be. I wanted to see what is a definition that we could use as like a working draft, at least for our business when we're trying to define what it is that we do here, that we felt like held on to what it originally was, but was elastic enough to expand to a lot of the advancements that are happening now. We introduced a definition, which, listen, if anyone wants to propose anything else, like it's fine. We're all open to ideas that solve problems for you guys. But this is what we came up with, okay? An audio-driven, on-demand program rooted in the spoken word. Typically episodic and conversational, podcasts cover wide-ranging themes and formats. They're accessed via open RSS feeds or other distribution platforms and often supplemented by video. Also, there's a video podcast if you want to get more clear about that. I mean, how many do we want to keep calling things vodcasts? Is that going to stick? Is there going to be a vodcast election? I don't know. An episodic on-demand program rooted in the spoken word where synchronized visuals meaningfully shape the experience. Here's the shorthand. If it works with your eyes closed, it's a podcast. Does that work? Like, does that help maybe a little? Okay. Picture on top, that's your boy in 2006 with the mutton chops in the middle. I'm talking to the Mays brothers, okay, at Clear Channel. They were the team that aggregate. I worked for that company for 10 years. They consolidated the radio industry. Literally, somebody snapped a picture of me because I got into a room with them and I was pitching them what I called Talk Radio 2.0. And I was telling them, we need to get into podcasts. You can see on his face, like, he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about and I really don't care. They didn't touch it for a long time after. I am so sick of talking about what a podcast is. I have to tell you. And a lot of people are like, why are we even dealing with this? And I think that if we can have any type of solve, whether it's definitional or not, that creates less friction for you so that you're not trying to have to deal with whose decision it is on a show, whether that has to be your YouTube team or your influencer team or your audio team, like, we just need something that's more clear for you guys. That's what I'm after. Whatever gets us there, I'm in. Hopefully we can move past that soon. But we gave it a working draft. Like, we're trying to put proposals on the table and give the market something to react to. That's where we're at. Okay, moving on. We launched yesterday here in an effort to create the Terranea Accords. We launched something we're calling the AMP Task Force, Alliance for Measurement in Podcasting. Nothing is officially started. We have not ratified anything yet. But it was a first step where we actually got a nice cross-section of the industry. I'm not going to say any names here, but we got representatives from some of the leading investing brands, platforms, publishers, talent agencies, measurement, to try to get around this measurement problem. How do we actually do this and move it forward? And I think if we do it through our common financial lens, we all have money to gain by doing this. I'm hopeful that we can find some kind of alignment. I don't know. We'll see how we do. But what we're trying to take on is number one, performance attribution, clearly. That's like job number one. Two, it would be nice to know what an impression is. Like if we're going to do that, is a download, a view, is a start, is a finish, is a something. It'd be nice to have some stuff there, make your CPMs make a little more sense, right? And if we can come up with a definition, great. If that even makes sense, maybe it doesn't. But I think in that order, that's what I believe is most important here. And so that's what's most important to us. The good news is all I can say is this. The right people are at the table and talking, and the right platforms are listening. And so I'm optimistic that we'll be able to make some change here. So our call to action, when we define the medium, we earn the right to align on metrics. When we can actually align on metrics, we can unlock scale from what we believe is a very undervalued channel. And you guys are mostly early adopters still. It is a young channel, and a lot of people are using it, but you know what you're doing a lot more than I think the rest of the market. And so you have a first mover advantage to capture an outsized share of voice and get more favorable economics as we try to remove the headaches. So the rest are going to have to chase what you've already built. So we want it on metrics, and we want clear performance data, okay? We want you to join the movement. If I can invite you to get your cameras out, I'm going to stand out of the way. We have a QR code here. This is our call to action, and it doesn't cost you anything. Through this QR code, you get to our link tree, okay? And our link tree gets you the world. You can download our white papers, the podcasts that I shared earlier, and then watch out because there's an extended version with all the interviews. It's like 30 episodes. But the big three you're going to want to see. And getting information is good. Like I hope you sign up for our newsletter because we're trying to get people rallied behind this. We want you to stay informed. If you can pay attention to our podcast, great. Definitely get the newsletter. Read some of the white papers and work that we're putting out there. But the other thing is we're asking you to, this is really the ask, okay? Above all that, that's fine. We want your voice. We want you to say something, okay? You guys are banging your heads into a wall every day. It's like half of what we talk about are these problems, and we need the people that have agency to change that and make that easier for you. We need them to hear you. So we've given you an opportunity to sign up. You can say if you need to stay anonymous. You can say if you're willing to talk to a committee and make it heard. You can come on a podcast. You might want to be part of a white paper. We'll work with your comms restrictions and your policies. But I think the most important thing is that if you feel what I think you're feeling, that you make it known and you stand up and you say, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. That's where we got to get to. So that's the ask. That's our call to action. And I just want to say, I think that the what we call the chief audio officers in this room, you are the self-regulating body of the future, and you can write the rules that invite more investment and protect expression. And we could probably double the size of this industry very quickly, which doubles the size of the opportunity for you if we can align around some of these things. So hopefully that's helpful to you. We're finding our frequency. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for listening to this very special episode of the Media Roundtable podcast. It is brought to you by Oxford Road, where we want you to succeed in this channel that we love so much, and we want you to use your influence for good. As a member of the marketing community, you have the power to advance voices that don't just entertain, but edify, and to build bridges across differences and preserve fair-minded discussion. It's one of the best parts about podcasting, as I call it, the greatest canvas in media for the free and open exchange of ideas. You get to be a part of it. If you're a marketer and you want to align your brand values with extraordinary, life-changing, and it truly can be, business outcomes, reach out to our agency. It's called Oxford Road. Go to oxfordroad.com. Do subscribe to our newsletter. It's called The Influencer, and we love feedback, good, bad, or otherwise. If we can do a better job at this show, you want to give me some tips on how to do a better keynote next year, hit us up, info@mediaroundtable.com. We have a sister podcast that comes from the great Stu Redwine. He leads creative around here, and it is called Ad Infinitum. It is about the business of creating effective advertising using the spoken word. Thank you to everyone, because it takes a village to pull this thing together. I'm not even going to try to thank all the people that made the summit happen, but special thanks to Haley, to Ruby, to Bianca, Kyle, Prince, Rob, Neil, Olivia. The team at Podcast One helps us a lot. As always, please influence responsibly.
With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 350 plus undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Yes, Mr. Gecko, you're a huge inspiration to us all. But who was your muse?
Oh, my dear old Nan. She imparted many wise words to me. She would say, never let the fame get to your head, always remember who you are, and let people get more than just savings with Geico's fast and friendly claim support. I lived up to her advice, and now anyone can file a claim anywhere and anytime. I miss her so much.
Did she go somewhere?
Yeah, extended quilting trip.
Ah.
Get more than just savings. Get more with Geico.